Reginald Punnett invented a method that would predict genetic traits of offspring when both parents' genotype for that particular trait is known. Today's lesson will involve using Punnett squares. In order to complete and interpret a Punnett square, we must first refer back to our notes on alleles. Our first point to note is that an allele is an alternative form of a gene. The next point to note is that when traits are inherited, they consist of at least 2 alleles per trait. For example, a human trait consists of 2 alleles. One allele is inherited from each parent. For example, one trait for eye color can be written as capital G, lowercase g. The capital G will represent green eye color and the lowercase g will represent gray eye color. The capital G will be inherited from the father, and the other allele, the lowercase g, will be inherited from the mother. As you remember, alleles can be dominant or recessive. A dominant allele is always represented with a capital letter. The recessive allele is always represented with a lowercase letter. Referring back to the previous eye color trait example, the dominant allele of the pair will dominate over the recessive allele. The allele inherited from the father is dominant over the allele inherited from the mother. The mother's allele is recessive. In other words, the green eye color allele will be dominant over the gray eye color allele. In addition to being dominant or recessive, allele pairs can be homozygous or heterozygous, also known as hybrid. A homozygous allele pair for blue eyes could be capital B, or lowercase b, lowercase b. A heterozygous or hybrid allele pair for brown eyes could be capital R, lowercase r. In the following slide, I have a table that will give you a visual representation of both possible allele pairs given for any one human trait. As you now know, allele pairs can tell you the organism's gene code or genotype as well as how the code is physically expressed on the organism. This is known as the organism's phenotype. A genotype looks like this. Again, the phenotype is a representation of the physical appearance of an organism for a particular trait. This is what an organism looks like. Now that you have a better understanding of alleles, genotypes, and phenotypes, we can move on to learning how to set up a Punnett square and predict an organism's genotype and phenotype, as well as getting a better understanding of the trait that the organism has inherited from its parents. First, we have an empty Punnett square. Two sides of this Punnett square will be labeled with each of the parents' allele pairs or genotype. The father's allele pair will be homozygous dominant for blue eyes. The mother's allele pair will be homozygous recessive for brown eyes. In other words, capital B, or blue eyes will be crossed with lowercase b, or brown eyes. Let's begin completing this Punnett square. For simplicity, this Punnett square will be divided into 4 quadrants, labeled as so. Each quadrant will represent a 25% chance that an organism would have a possible genotype. Let's begin completing this Punnett square. First, we will take the father's first capital B allele and place it in quadrant 1. Then we will take the mother's first lowercase b allele and place it in quadrant 1 also. Quadrant 1 is complete. Let's move on to quadrant 2. We are going to take the father's second capital B allele and move it into quadrant 2. Then we are going to take the mother's first lowercase b allele and place it in quadrant 2 also. Quadrant 2 is complete. In the following 4 slides, I will complete the Punnett square for the quadrants 3 and 4, and we will begin predicting the offspring's phenotype and genotype. Now that I have finished this Punnett square, let's take a look at the genotype for the offspring. Remember, each quadrant's genotype has a 25% chance of being the genotype for this offspring's eye color trait. Since all of the quadrants are identical, there is a 100% chance that the offspring's genotype will be heterozygous or hybrid, represented as capital B, lowercase b. Now let's determine what the offspring's eye color will be based on this capital B, lowercase b genotype. We know that any time a genotype includes a dominant allele, in this case a capital B paired with a recessive allele, in this case a lowercase b, the dominant allele or blue eye color will dominate over the recessive allele or brown eye color. Therefore, the offspring's eye color or phenotype will be blue. The next slide will summarize what we have learned about heredity and Punnett squares. When considering inherited traits of offsprings, one must first know both parents' genotype for that specific trait. In our example, the father's genotype or phenotype for eye color was homozygous blue, and the mother's genotype and phenotype was homozygous brown. When predicting their offspring's eye color, we need to use a Punnett square in order to cross the parents' genotypes. We found that the offspring's eye color will be heterozygous blue.